Hello, my friends. And today we'll start with tragic news. Pokrovsk is encircled. This was reported by the correspondent on the Pokrovsk axis, Yulia Kiriyenko. Pokrovsk, northern part of the city. Contact between the Russians and our drone pilots. Watch closely. 3 guys in the frame against one of ours. He's raising his hands. Fate unknown. This is already on the way to Myrnohrad. The city of Pokrovsk itself is surrounded. No exaggeration. The Russians are advancing. They're posting snipers on the high rises to make it impossible for our assault troops to advance. The main fighting is around the railway tracks. And this is while a few kilometers behind Pokrovsk, infantry is in the trenches. It seems they've replayed the images of victorious street fighting in residential neighborhoods. We are losing the city, we have to admit it, but we are also losing people on the outskirts who have no way to get out because all decisions were made too late. Buildings number 10, 8, 14 on the southeast near the highway are occupied by the Russians. Roughly speaking, it's a horizontal strong point from which Russian shooters fire on the approaches and observe the entire sector. You can now see how the Russians are gradually trying to move through the defensive lines around this citadel. Local assaults are taking place on the sector, artillery and drones are at work, and the space is being gradually tied up. The Russians are building the backbone of a defense that's hard to break and which only gets tighter over time. The point of their strategy right now is to lure our units toward Myrnohrad. Yes, exactly there. By doing that, they push us off those high rises and south of Myrnohrad to narrow the front and get into a ring where maneuver and evacuation will be impossible. When units end up in the heart of Myrnohrad, the Russians will have the opportunity to block exits and increase the pressure. The goal could be mass surrenders or worse, because basically there will be no chance to break out. I really want to believe in a miracle, I want to be wrong, and I want this not to happen. By judging by my reasoning and how I see the situation, that's exactly how it's shaping up. This is fact. But if you look at an official geolocation map, you can see that there is already a gray zone along the highway from the town of Rodinske to Pokrovsk. That actually indicates the battle is effectively over. For now, of course, the Russians are working with snipers and FPV drones and aren't letting our fighters move, but they haven't fully secured the area along the highway, so it's only a gray zone there. Still, it's already obvious that retaking positions in Pokrovsk won't be possible. The fact that the armed forces are moving in additional reserves to try to improve the situation on the Pokrovsk front is also true, but the problem is that the Russians can see the movements and post videos showing how they destroy equipment. So, as we can see, a drone based encirclement is no less terrifying than the physical presence of troops. Uh, as for what will happen next, I think everyone understands. Also, the situation in Myrnohrad is catastrophic, besides the fact that the city is basically completely encircled. The Russians are also breaking into the city center. This has been reported by Ukrainian forces fighters. Myrnohrad direction, and the Russians have entrenched themselves in certain sections of the sector where a Recon and Sabotage group landing was previously recorded. After sweeping the area, most houses were empty. This allowed the Russians to set up a support line inward to prevent a quick counter exit by our forces. The VT-40 unit from the Rubicon Center has been pulled into the operation, judging by surveillance video. Their task is to clear the private sector neighborhood and open a corridor for further advance by assault units. The Russians are operating in a coordinated way, house to house clearances are underway, and they are funneling in additional infantry to push through the streets. If surveillance isn't stepped up and their logistics links aren't cut, the southern part of the city risks quickly breaking off. This is not a separate random raid, it's an attempt to entrench and expand a bridgehead in the private sector area. We need to keep them in our sights, abruptly disrupt their clearances, and cut off their supply routes. Meanwhile, in effectively occupied Pokrovsk, the local residents who still remain are moving around the city. A drone recorded this, and after living under constant shelling and combat for more than a year, they've of course grown used to it and aren't afraid of what's happening. So it's written. Among ruined houses and smashed and burnt out cars walk two grandmothers, taking a literal stroll with a bicycle and little handbags. The women head to their homes in the most dangerous city on earth, Pokrovsk. Apparently, shelling, drone attacks, and explosions have become ordinary everyday life for them. Oh, there is also a video showing shelling of the Krasnolimanska mine near the village of Rodinsky. The buildings are damaged but not completely destroyed. So the Russians didn't level them to the ground, which means they can now actively mass forces there. Snipers and drone operators can work from that positions, and it will be very difficult to dislodge them. In the Hulay or in the Dobropillia area, the Russians continue to assault Nikonorivka, Ivanivka, and Novoshakhova, it's clearly been done to advance closer to Dobropillia. In addition, just like before, they want to straighten the front line to reinforce that feast. That's why they're attacking Volodymyrivka, Shakhova, and Sofiivka. However, the Ukrainian forces are carrying out counterattacks here, so the Russians haven't been able to move forward. Over the past 24 hours, the front line has remained unchanged. Now, moving to the Novopavlivka direction. Activity here has temporarily decreased. The Russians are assaulting Dachne and claim to have captured the village. The armed forces of Ukraine have also unofficially reported that they've lost it. But for now, according to a statement from the Ukrainian general staff, fighting for it is still ongoing. So therefore, the front line here also remains unchanged for the time being. In the direction of the village of Pokrovsk, in the Dnipropetrovsk region, the Russians are assaulting Sechneva, pushing through in the area of Oleksiivka, and attacking Yegorivka, Rybne, and Uspenivka. However, over the past 24 hours, there have been no new gains, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Hulaypole direction, And the Russians continue trying to advance beyond the village of Okhotnichne, but they have made no progress and no changes have been recorded over the past day. Meanwhile, shelling of the frontline areas continue. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russians are assaulting Stepovе and attempting to break through towards Stepnohirsk. But over the past 24 hours, they have achieved no success, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue shelling the right bank of the Dnipro River. However, no new offensive actions have been recorded so far, and the situation remains unchanged. Now let's move to the Kostiantynivka direction. Here, the Russians continue trying to break through to the outskirts of Kostiantynivka. The Ukrainian forces are destroying them there, but the attacks don't stop. They're also pushing toward Ivano-Pilla and assaulting Klebanbyk. At the same time as before, offensive actions are being recorded in the area of Rusin Yar. However, over the past 24 hours, there have been no changes. The Ukrainian forces are successfully repelling all attacks. In the Siversk direction, the Russians are trying to break through from two sides toward the outskirts of the city, but they are not succeeding despite high activity. So far, all attacks have been repelled, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Lyman direction, the Russians are pushing toward the village of Stavky and assaulting Drobisheva, Novoselivka, and Korovy Yar. However, here as well, there have been no changes over the past 24 hours. In the Borova direction, no new assaults have been recorded, and the front line has remained unchanged throughout the day. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are assaulting Petropavlivka, pushing past Pishane, and advancing through the fields toward Kurilivka and Novosinove. Ukrainian forces fighters described the situation around Kupiansk as follows. In Kupiansk, the situation remains difficult. Yes, we managed to reclaim part of the built up area in the city, but there is no full control, neither over the city nor over the situation as a whole. One thing is clear, the fighting continues and nothing is close to being resolved yet. And of course, it's not 60 Russian soldiers remaining, it's quite a bit more, to put it mildly. I don't know why someone is giving Zelensky false information. Bitter truth is better than sweet lies. In the direction of Veliki Burluk, the Russians are pushing toward the village of Kolodezne and assaulting Bologivka. Activity here remains high, but they haven't managed to advance further, and the front line remains stable. In the Kharkiv direction, the Russians are not conducting any attacks, so everything remains unchanged there. In Vovchansk, however, fighting continues, and according to Russian claims, they advancing closer to the village of Sinelnikove. So far, though there is no confirmation of this, the Ukrainian forces are destroying them in the forested area, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Sumy direction, the Russians have greatly reduced the activity, carrying out just about one attack per day, and they achieving no success, so the situation here remains stable. But the shelling continues, and today, once again, it's been reported that major cities are under significant threat as the Russians have improved their aerial bombs. The Russians have equipped their air bombs with turbojet engines, increasing their range to 200 kilometers. This range will allow Russian aircraft to stay outside the reach of Ukrainian air defenses. The Defense Intelligence of Ukraine told the newspaper Telegraph in response to a request. Intelligence officials didn't rule out that Russia may use guided modular glide bombs to strike deep into Ukrainian territory. Meanwhile, Putin claims that they want to be friends with everyone and pose no threat to anyone.
Dear friends, our country threatens no one. Russia, like other nuclear powers, is developing its nuclear potential and strategic capabilities. Everything we are talking about now has long been announced. All our plans for creating advanced weapons systems, for developing the defense industry, and for equipping the Russian army and navy with modern technology and weapons are being fulfilled.
In short, the arms race continues. At the same time, a Republican senator stated that if Putin isn't stopped, it will affect the entire world.
That Vladimir Putin is a liar, a murderer, and a man responsible for ordering the systematic torture, kidnapping, and rape of innocent civilians, believe me, because the evidence is mile high. If you believe that Ukraine is a country an ocean away and not relevant to our national security, think again. The world is small. The world is watching. The strength of our alliances are on the line, and the future of democracy in the world is on the line if we do anything less than defeat Vladimir Putin. That Vladimir Putin
Strong words, but as we can see, Trump isn't doing anything to help Ukraine win against Putin. He changed his mind about providing long-range missiles, imposed sanctions, but at the same time, China continues buying oil from Russia. And so the war goes on. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.